Okay? And I've got the transcripts of those interviews and things that were said. Now I've got to redo those interviews so I can get them to close this case.
This is 72-year-old Merle Mackey, who is currently being interrogated by detectives at the Hernando County Sheriff's Office for the disappearance of his wife, Evelyn Laverne Mackey, in 1981. To understand how we got here and why he's being interrogated for a missing case that happened over 3 decades ago, we need to know how this whole thing began. The story takes place in Hernando County, Florida. Evelyn Laverne, who was divorced from her Navy SEAL husband, Larry Wallace, had to raise her 2 children on her own. 11-year-old Kelly Carpenter and 19-year-old Charles Truelock. Sometime in the late 70s, she met Merle Mackey at a prison outreach ministry for non-violent offenders. This event took place at her local church, and after seeing each other regularly, the two quickly formed a strong relationship. Merle was in and out of prison at the time, but quickly settled and moved in with Evelyn once they got married. They were a happy couple, and everything seemed to be going smoothly. Evelyn's teenage daughter last saw her on the morning of November 5th, 1981. She made breakfast for her daughter, and Evelyn's new husband, Merle Mackey, took her to school. That afternoon, Merle went to pick up Evelyn's daughter alone. He told her and her brother that Evelyn had gone to Ohio to take care of her sick sister-in-law. But she did not arrive there, and her sister-in-law wasn't expecting a visit from her. Just a few days after Evelyn was last seen, Kelly was starting to get more and more worried for her mother, continually asking her stepfather about her whereabouts and when she would be coming home. Merle also told the police different stories, saying Evelyn had gone to Tampa, Florida, that she had returned home and left with a boyfriend. This didn't align with his previous statements and seemed completely out of character for Evelyn. Merle's lies did not stop there. He consistently changed his story, stating that she'd gone away to be a missionary or that she left the country to live somewhere else. The only thing that the detectives were certain of was that Merle Mackey was a compulsive liar. He was a person who liked to tell falsehoods out of habit, and he continued to tweak and change his narrative each time he was interviewed. All that detectives knew at the time was that Evelyn vanished from the face of the earth on November 5th. There was no record of her being anywhere. Her family reported her missing in January 1982. Detectives learned that on the day she went missing, money had been withdrawn from her banking account multiple times. Months later, the account was completely empty. At that point, the case went cold, and it was not until Sergeant Phil Lankin attended the National Homicide Conference 33 years later that an inquiry into Laverne's disappearance was reignited. Investigators tracked down Merle in Chandler, Texas, and executed a ruse. They told him a plane crashed in South America and that they might have found Laverne's remains, possibly entitling him to money from the airline. In order for Merle to collect the payment, however, they said he needed to go over his statement regarding her disappearance. Merle agreed, and once back at the station, investigators would ask him to authenticate his previous interview transcripts.
Do you remember the day she left? No. I'm trying to think what was. Come on. Walk with me here, buddy.
Here, the detective is clearly frustrated, but he quickly makes it seem as if he was joking as he laughs it off. If he gets too serious too soon, Merle would feel threatened and backed into a corner, limiting any chance of getting a confession. Establishing a friendly atmosphere where it's easy for both of them to converse is highly important in this interrogation.
Do you remember her ever saying something about her brother being brother's wife?
At this point, the situation is very fragile. The detective has no legal right to detain Merle, and if he pushes him too far, he will leave. The detective is trying to find the right balance of still fishing for the right information whilst being careful not to trigger Merle into leaving the room.
And did I kind of play a trick on you about she's been found before? Yes, I did. Okay? And I apologize for that. But I didn't know any other way I could get you to walk through this story. Back on November the 5th, 1981, okay? Unfortunately, I think that it's something you've been hiding all of this time.
Notice how Merle's demeanor has changed. He went from being relaxed and confident throughout the entire interview to being slightly anxious and attentive the more that the detective pushed. 1. There was a statute of limitations in place for second-degree murder, which has already expired, meaning the detectives needed a confession in order to charge him with premeditated first-degree murder. Otherwise, Merle would be free.
Improve every single lie that you made. We've talked to 15, 16, 17 people involved and around Laverne's life. We've gone through everything. Like Randy's telling you, it's for real.
At this point, Merle feels like he's been backed into a corner, so he decides to change strategy. This was a blatant lie by the detective, but it is necessary because it makes Merle feel like he's already been found out, when in fact the only way the detectives can charge Merle with anything is if he has a confession. Merle is still able to walk free.
What do you want? I want a body. Tell me bottom line, I want to know where she's at. When this story finally gets told, you are going to look like such a flippin' animal, such a flippin' lowlife. Give me the damn body. Because without the body, it looks like a first-degree murder in every way, shape, form, and fashion.
Merle is now seconds away from leaving. The detective quickly comes up with his final strategy. He would now try and downplay the entire incident, convincing him that whatever happened was not his fault and it was merely an accident. For Merle, this is a much easier thing to confess to, rather than being seen as a heartless murderer. Although this still wouldn't convict him of first-degree murder, it was now their only option. In 3 years, Merle Mackey has finally admitted that his wife was indeed dead, and that he was present at the scene. However, the detectives are not fully convinced of this version of the story.
You telling me the truth right now? I'm telling you, this is straight business. Merle, you're picking her up. I just took her clothes. Are you pulling her? Are you taking her up out of the water? Did you lift her back up onto the dock? No, because she was, blood was just spurting out. Just spurting out.
At this precise moment, Merle Mackey unknowingly confessed to committing first-degree murder. The word spurting suggests that Evelyn was still bleeding and therefore alive when Merle decided to tie her up and throw her into the water.
I held her with one hand, I took the anchor, I put it on her, I wrapped it around her with the rope, and I turned her loose and shoved her under the gun. I'm done. You want to argue? I don't want to argue. I said I will be in Florida and I will show you the doctor. That's it. I'm done.
Although Merle had confessed to killing his wife, the case was out of the detectives' jurisdiction, meaning they had no authority or arrest powers. They presented the case to Florida's 8th Judicial Circuit Assistant Attorney Brian Kramer, and a grand jury indicted Merle for first-degree murder. Detectives searched the docks where he claimed to have left Laverne's body, but they concluded there was no way her body was going to be found. They didn't believe that Merle was telling the truth about where he hid the body. Merle pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 10 years in prison.